The aroma of freshly baked bread and coffee wafted through Brunswick Street as Lucy Chen stood outside her bakery, Sweet Fusion, admiring the new Christmas decorations. In the display window, traditional gingerbread men sat alongside her latest creation, matcha and red bean Christmas tree breads dusted with coconut snow. The gold neon sign above glowed with Merry Christmas in both English and Chinese characters. As a second-generation Chinese-Australian born and raised in Melbourne, Lucy had always sought balance between tradition and innovation, between her Chinese heritage and Australian identity. Her bakery was a testament to this ongoing journey of cultural fusion. "Those matcha rolls look amazing today," a familiar voice called out. Tom Mitchell stood at the entrance, his violin case slung over his shoulder, brown curls catching the morning light. "Becoming quite the regular, Mr. Mitchell," Lucy smiled, waving him in. The music teacher from the Melbourne Conservatorium had been stopping by every morning for the past 3 months, ever since he discovered her unique take on traditional pastries. "It's still just Tom," he reminded her, approaching the counter. "And you know I'm always happy to be your taste tester." Lucy plated a piece of her newest creation, the matcha Christmas tree bread. She watched nervously as Tom took a bite, his eyes widening immediately. "This is incredible," he exclaimed. "The matcha isn't too strong, and the red bean gives it just the right sweetness. It's like Christmas in Japan meets Melbourne." "Close," Lucy laughed. "More like Christmas in China meets Melbourne. Though I suppose fusion food is all about breaking boundaries." Tom leaned against the counter, sipping his flat white. "Speaking of fusion, I had an idea. The conservatorium is hosting a Christmas concert series, and I was thinking, what if we combined it with your baking? A Christmas afternoon tea with live classical music right here in the bakery?" Lucy looked around her small shop, imagining the possibilities. The space wasn't large, but it had character: exposed brick walls decorated with local artwork, vintage furniture she'd collected from Melbourne's famous markets, and large windows that flooded the room with natural light. "That could work," she said slowly. "I've been wanting to do something special for the holidays." "Great." Tom's enthusiasm was contagious. "I could bring some of my students, make it a proper recital. We could call it Sweet Christmas Melodies or something." Before Lucy could respond, the bell above the door chimed, and her parents walked in. Alan and Mei Chen had owned a traditional Chinese restaurant in Box Hill for 20 years, before retiring. They still found their daughter's fusion bakery concept somewhat puzzling. "Ah, busy already," her mother said in Mandarin, eyeing Tom before turning to Lucy. "We brought some red beans for you. Better than the canned ones." "Thanks, Mom," Lucy replied in English, accepting the bag. "Mom, Dad, this is Tom. He teaches at the conservatorium." "Nice to meet you," Tom said warmly, attempting a slight bow. Lucy's father nodded politely while her mother inspected the display case. "Christmas tree bread with matcha?" she asked, switching to English. "So creative. But traditional mooncakes sold better, yes?" "Different seasons, Mom," Lucy sighed. "Christmas is coming, and people want festive treats. But our traditional recipes are still here," Lucy interrupted gently. "Along with new ones. That's what fusion means." Tom, sensing the tension, cleared his throat. "Mrs. Chen, your daughter's creations are amazing. She's become quite famous in the neighborhood. In fact, we're planning a special Christmas event." As Tom explained his idea, Lucy watched her parents' reactions. Her mother's expression remained skeptical, but her father seemed intrigued. "Music and food," he said thoughtfully. "Like Chinese New Year celebrations. Good combination." Over the next few weeks, Sweet Fusion transformed. Lucy experimented with new Christmas recipes that honored both her heritage and her Australian upbringing: taro yule logs, pandan candy cane cookies, and dim sum crafted to look like Christmas ornaments. Tom brought in his students for practice sessions, filling the bakery with everything from traditional carols to contemporary arrangements. The preparations weren't without challenges. Lucy's mother frequently dropped by with suggestions for more traditional offerings, while some of Tom's classical purist colleagues questioned the venue choice. But something beautiful was emerging from the chaos. One evening, as Lucy was closing up, Tom stayed behind to help. The December heat had finally cooled, and a gentle breeze carried the sound of Christmas carolers from the street. "Try this," Lucy said, offering him a piece of her latest creation, a butterfly pea flower Christmas pavlova with lychee cream. "The color is incredible," Tom marveled at the natural blue hue. "It's like the Melbourne sky at twilight." "That's exactly what I was going for," Lucy smiled. "Australian Christmas meets Asian flavors." You know, Tom said carefully, your mom stopped by the conservatorium yesterday. Lucy froze. She did? She wanted to know more about the music program. Ended up staying for an hour, watching the students practice. She even suggested we incorporate some Chinese classical music into the Christmas concert. Lucy felt tears prick her eyes. She did that? Your parents love you, Lucy. They might not always understand your choices, but they're trying. Just like you're trying to bridge two worlds with your baking. The evening of the Christmas concert arrived with typical Melbourne flair, bright sunshine followed by a sudden thunderstorm that cleared just in time for the event. Sweet Fusion was transformed, with fairy lights twinkling among paper lanterns, and tables laden with an array of fusion Christmas treats. Tom's students sat up in the corner, their instruments gleaming. The program was a carefully curated mix of Western Christmas carols and Chinese classical music arranged with holiday themes. Lucy's parents arrived early, her mother immediately heading to the kitchen to help, while her father proudly explained the significance of each Chinese instrument to curious guests. As twilight approached, the bakery filled with people from all walks of Melbourne life, local artists, international students, longtime residents, and young families. They shared plates of Lucy's creations while the music wove through the crowd, bridging cultures and generations. The highlight of the evening was Tom's solo performance, a violin arrangement that blended Dashing Through the Snow with a traditional Chinese melody Lucy recognized from her childhood. She watched from behind the counter as her mother closed her eyes, swaying gently to the music, while her father tapped his foot in time. Later, as the crowd thinned and the music softened to background melodies, Lucy's mother approached the counter. Your pandan cookies, she said softly. They remind me of the ones my mother made, but different. Good different. She paused. Maybe, you teach me how to make them? Lucy hugged her mother tight, breathing in the familiar scent of jasmine tea and home. The last guests left well past closing time, but nobody seemed to mind. Tom helped Lucy and her parents clean up, the four of them working in comfortable harmony. Outside, the Melbourne night was alive with Christmas lights and summer warmth. Dinner? Tom suggested as they finally finished. I know a great place in Chinatown that does fusion dumplings. Lucy looked at her parents. Her father smiled and took her mother's hand. You go, he said. We old people need rest. But Sunday dinner, you come, Tom? Mother will cook traditional Chinese food. I'd love to, Tom replied sincerely. As they walked through the Melbourne streets later that night, Lucy and Tom passed the giant Christmas tree at Federation Square. The lights reflected in the Yarra River, creating a magical display. Thank you, Lucy said suddenly. For what? For helping me create something new while honoring something old. For understanding that sometimes fusion isn't just about food. Tom took her hand, and together they watched the lights dance on the water. Above them, stars twinkled in the summer sky, while somewhere nearby, Christmas carolers sang of peace and joy. In that moment, Lucy felt truly at home, in her city, in her culture, in her heart. The next morning, Lucy added a new item to her menu, love letters, pastries shaped like traditional Chinese love letters but filled with Christmas spices and drizzled with white chocolate. Some said they tasted like Melbourne itself, a perfect blend of East and West, tradition and innovation, tied together with something that could only be called magic. The end.